I am Enrique Gonzalez Mueller, and welcome to Are You Listening? This episode, we will cover low-frequency instruments, bass, subsynths, lock them in tight with our previous work on beats. A little bit of editing, a little bit of repair work, but also some creativity. Please remember to check out our show notes for tools, episodes, and resources, and off we go. Bass! How low can you go? Let's go look at the low frequency content of this mix, more specifically in the slew of basses we have here. Let's go look at the arrangement and then those emotional objectives of each one of these parts. We have 2 bits of low end, this sub bass here. And then we also have that main dong tonic that happens on the second half of the loop. The note is kind of missing, so we need to go fix that. I also know this verse should not have a ton of low end, right? Because we're saving that for the chorus. But yet we are going to not play the sub bass during the verses. And then we go to the pre-choruses when you have this is going to be the track that is going to be responsible for the lowest bit of low end. And then finally, we have this other part here. You might remember when we did our very general overview of issues and things to look out for. Here we're going to have to do a little bit of amplitude editing. I'm also going to take this opportunity for a little bit of creativity, because if we listen in this section, we have this bass. And this one is similar. So, with this plan in hand, let's move forward. In our undying pursuit of dynamic uniformity, we're going to have to do a little bit of amplitude editing and comping on these basses. Is this the role of the mixer? Sometimes. We have been given permission to not only get creative, but also go and fix things a little bit. This bass right here, it has some bum notes. So I have created a duplicate playlist, or rather a safety here, that I've called Amp Edited. Basically what I've done is grabbed that first note. When the her happens that we don't want, I basically grabbed that and popped it in every single instance where it loops. So now we sound like this. Yay for clarity and consistency. So that's going to help a lot. But the other thing that I did was a little bit of amplitude editing, plus a dB.5, later on +2. If we put these back, you see the overall level here is a little bit louder than here, and it's a little bit louder than here. I know that I'm going to put compressors on this. I'm just trying to be nice to them and give them input level that is more consistent. This is not only going to help with that bit of processing, but also the overall clarity and forwardness of the bass presence is going to improve. So here it's a little bit hard to hear because it's a little bit quieter. So write this down. I am not doing automation. I'm doing fixing to the recording level. So now the bass is considerably more uniform. This same idea I have applied to this other bass that we have here in the pre-chorus. Listen to how the notes are not very consistent in amplitude. So here I'm just doing a pass where I improve upon that. Considerably better. Now that I've done this across the whole track, we have one more bit of amplitude editing, which is this track here. Hello, good morning. That was loud. This is this loud because, of course, our amplitude editing, I have decreased the level by about 6 dB. And this is now making all of the track, one, more uniform. As we can see here in the middle, I only had to do a little bit, -1 instead of -6. And then two, by decreasing the overall amplitude of the track, I'm also thinking that if I put a compressor or an EQ on this, I'm not going to distort the compressor in the EQ from the get-go. So I'll have a better time processing this. Final thing is we have this sub bass track. I did a little bit of poetic license editing. We start with the verse. And it's firing away in the verse. It's so low that it's kind of letting the low frequency cat out of the bag too early. Because I've been given permission to do a little bit of editing, what I'm doing is I'm saving up that low end and I'm muting this. So you see here, in stylish gray, that I've just muted it so that it does not play during the verses. And I'm going to play it halfway through, and then it does come in the pre-chorus to delineate contrast. Check it out. There. Of course, if you're listening on laptop speakers, it might not be very salient, as this is a lot of low end. So hopefully you're listening on great monitoring. But now the pre-chorus comes in and boom, we have a new sound that delineates this is a different section with a different emotional objective. I said that I always like to start at the dense-est part of the song, which would be the chorus. We're not going to do that. We are going for the verse. Here in the verse, we have this bass. I'd like to start here and just save my energy for the lowest of low end with that other bass for later. So here, I'm just getting excited and I want to go for character and quirk. This bass to me doesn't have a lot of character, but the line is super interesting. Let's try to envision what this bass could be and what is our north, right? What should we aim our creativity towards? This song to me is quirky. It has this kind of 90s rock vibe, and I want to make it a little bit more modern sounding, a little bit more stylized. So if your creativity should point somewhere, it should be to let's try to make it a little bit quirkier and maybe more modern. Here we go. So, of course, you had your thoughts, and because I can't read your minds yet, I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking. I would like to have this bass be somewhat distorted and gritty, but at the same time, I want it to sound slick and neat and articulate. So in order to do this, I have developed already a little strategy here where you can see that I have these two tracks coming out of an aux, which is this bass, but I'm also making a copy, which I will distort. So I would like to have a bass that feels round, not a ton of low end, but round, and then do a parallel version where it's just distorted and gritty. And that is going to give me the character that I want. I am putting a little bit of saturation over the bass. By doing so, we will make the sound a little bit richer, a little bit brighter, and because we're saturating it, it's going to almost act as a little bit of compression in the front end. So it's like adding a little bit of salt, if you will, to your food. Here's what we had, and then 2 bars in, I'll pop in this saturator. So you hear that the bass doesn't sound distorted. It just sounds like it pops forward a little bit more. It also got brighter, which is something that I now will have to maybe curb a little bit with my next little bit of processing. Then let's go and try to fit this lower, cleaner version in a little bit more. Here I have an instance of Neutron, and in it I'm adding an EQ, a compressor, an exciter, and another compressor. I'm trying to fix big issues and then sculpt a little bit more. So here in the EQ, this curve, which looks kind of weird, we already have the lowest of lows are our kick drums. So the first filter is a little bit of house cleaning, telling my bass, yo, you got to move over to the next available sliver, which is away from 65 hertz. Then I'm also adding a little bit of a peak resonance at 72. So right where it cuts off there, I'm adding a little bit more low end so that at that first available little sliver of frequency that it has, it can pop out of there and own it. This -3, I'm unmasking the kick. This is a lot of talking. Let's go and listen because Neutron is awesome. I have this track 15 edit set to be in my masking module. And what is track 15? It's this kick drum sample here. So you see in orange, that's that kick drum. And you see that there's a lot of energy where this filter at 150 is at. So if I put these two together now, look what happens when I pop the EQ in. Don't even listen to the bass. Listen to how the EQ is giving clarity to the kick drum. I'm going to mute the bass actually. And I want you to hear the kick drum. Then I'm going to put the bass in and do not listen to the bass. Listen to how the sound of the kick drum changes. It feels like a little bit of clarity in the kick drum, just a little bit. It just feels like it's not as punchy and full as before. So now with this EQ, we're trying to gain some of that clarity from this bass. Here we go. Yes, we did. We need a little bit more low end. So perhaps this guy right here, this resonant peak, I'm going to up that a little bit to gain a little bit more perception of warmth. Considerably better. Then we have a compressor. And this compressor is an interesting bit of technology that we're deploying here because I am only compressing the frequencies between 657 to, who are you? 11K, basically higher mid-range. Why? Because I have you love it when I sing. The thing about that higher end stuff is that it really pops out. So I'm having a compressor. Every time it goes up high, it's just taming it a little bit. So it's frequency dependent compression. Way better. The difficulty here might be, how do you come up with this and why are those parameters where they are? When you listen, envision what you want this to sound like or what is bugging you about it. And to me, it was those mid-range notes just popping out too much. And I'm going for the tool that is most effectively going to help me with this. And this is the reason why I'm choosing a frequency-dependent compressor. And that's also the reason why I'm deploying a high ratio, 11 or almost 12 to 1. The attack is very, very fast, and the release is also really fast as well. This is what's behind this decision making. Then I have an exciter. I just want it to be a little bit more aggressive, just a little bit, and have it just pop forward. So it's a little bit, again, of salt on the other end. A lot better. And this is also because of the type of saturation that I'm choosing, it's sounding a little bit fatter as well. Last but not least, I am deploying a last compressor. But this compressor is sidechaining to the entire beat. So here you see in my key input, I have drum sample side compression. I've created a bus that here in this main aux, which is all of my drum samples are coming out of it, I am sending Unity Gain a copy of everything that is going out of here, which is all of the samples, and that's what I want my bass to be ducking to this sidechain compressor. So here you see that I have turned on my side chain to be the external full, and here if we listen, when I pop it in, you hear how the bass just takes a little bit of a back seat, which is okay. And it's really reacting to the transient hit of the kick and the snares that are coming through. The ratio is 6 to 1. It's kind of a moderate ratio to put it in. The attack is quite fast, and the release is determined by how fast do I want it to come back to zero. And it gives me a little bit of a pumping feeling. In our previous season, we took a deeper dive into sidechain compression. So if you're curious, go check that out. But here, this is getting us in a great space for this main bass. So here is how this warmer sound feels like. It feels like it really goes forward. Now, for the weirder, funkier, awesomer stuff, let's go and get distorted. Here I have a copy, and this copy sounds exactly the same as the other one, minus all the plugins, right? This approach is what I like to call an exploratory approach. As you have seen, I'm a preparer. I envision stuff, I make my educated guesses, and then I launch in to try to find. If it doesn't quite hit the mark, I tweak a little bit and move forward. For this sound, which is distortion, what I want is something that is gritty, that pops out, that doesn't mess with the low end of the other one, but it's kind of this fun exploration that I want to do. So I'm going to start taking an educated guess. I'm going to put this green screamer on. Why? Because of metal. A lot of my metal guitar players out there know that typically you put one of these beloved green pedals in front of your amp to tuck in the low end a little bit and give it a little bit of a boost. And this is what I'm trying to do. I'm going to turn this up a bit. So you hear that the tone becomes richer. We also got a little bit louder, and we got a little bit brighter, and that low end did tuck in. Okay, so then I'm going, I now want this to sound like it's coming out of an amp, and I try to envision it. And here, literally, I went through a whole bunch of different amps until the sound in my head was met a little bit more. And I ended up at this. Here's the before. That kind of snarl I really, really like. And here, of course, if you see me grab, instead of this 24 Friedman vintage, we go to the previous one, check out what happens. it has too much mid-range. So again, I am flipping through these until I get to the closest and then I tweak from there. So this is giving me the snarl that I want. Then I have another instance of Neutron, and I'm actually kind of copying what I had before. A compressor first. Why? Because I really just want to deal with high mid frequency issues that I had before, right? So there we go. An exciter. Why? Because more distortion. And now it sounds fatter. But now we're too fat, so I'm putting an equalizer. And now I don't have all of that low end bumpiness, but I also took out a lot of top end. Why? Because I want this tucked into the other one, and the top end might be a little too much. Here, I'm having fun, as hopefully you can tell. Compressor number 2 is doing the same thing as the other one. It is reacting to the kicks and snares. So the bass now sounds like a little kind of constrained, little distorted guy that I'm really liking. And now I just feel like I'm going to put a little more bite. This is Explorationville. So I tried a whole mess of saturators, and then I found this one by Native Instruments, Bite. And it bit crushes, basically. It can deteriorate your sound by emulating the sampling rate. And it's quite grotesque, and by grotesque, I mean awesome. Check it out. Whoa! If you guys are jumping out of your seat because it's loud and awesome, that's what it's meant to do. We will take care of that jumping out of level in a second. Here, Neutron, again, are finishing touches. This bite saturation just made things considerably louder, and we have more low end. So here I'm deploying a bit of EQ that's going to help me with the offensive frequencies. Having this at 730 pretty much is just a little sliver where it can pop out. And this last compressor is yet again looking at our kicks and snares and ducking a little bit. Why? Because the previous saturator grabbed all of my envelope shaping and it just flattened it out again. So here's the before. There. Now we, of course, can put this to taste. Here's our original one. And I'm going to sneak this one in a little bit. Perfect. Whew! That was an adventure. So we have our verse bass is locked. Every bit of seemingly wandering that we did was informed by this initial objective that we carved out. And in that way, this exploration stuff becomes efficient and fun. So this is the bass in the pre-chorus and in the chorus, and we have burdened this guy with being the lowest of lows in bass world. What I want to make this bass is more snarly. The tone is evocative of my dear friend Jason Newsted from ex-Metallica, and Jason had a mean right hand with a pick. And that snarl that comes from his attack, I was his engineer for years, and I used to just sit in the control room we were recording and just see how he would viciously attack those strings with his pick. And that snarl is something that I want to grab here. The first thing I'm going to do to this, I'm putting a saturator so that it can just excite the sound a little bit more. And you see that it got a little bit louder, it got a little bit brighter, and that pick sound just pops through a little bit more. But I'm thinking now that I want to round things off Jason used to have an Ampeg SVT Classic that was, it's a lovely, gigantic refrigerator that took two of us to haul in anywhere. So I'm putting this in to see if I can get a little closer to that. And I found a tone that rounds things off a little bit. And here I start with, I put this in just very quickly. I went through ultra low. Oh no, it got a little too muddy. How about the mid range? I lost a lot of clarity when I went to 228 at 100 hertz, so 3K was better. And this is how I'm going again. I have a sound in my head and I'm tweaking until I find something that sounds more and more sculpted towards my vision. Now, you're not ready for this, but I'm going to pull it up anyways. Shablam! Look at this. I'm putting this Solid State Logic 4000E console module. Why? Because again, I'm nostalgic. This reminds me of starting as a runner and then as an assistant. Metallica was in the studio a lot, and I would go and look at what they did, and it was all done at these rooms that had SSLs. And then I worked under Mike Frazier and Randy Staub, who did a bunch of Metallica stuff. And this is the sound. If I pop this in, though, our heads are going to blow off. Why? Because look here. I am purposefully distorting the heck out of this module. Because like Toby Wright, another great engineer, he would say that when you see the red light of overload go on an SSL module, that just meant that signal was going through it. So I'm going to turn this on, but before that, I'm going to put this instance of relay and bring this down, yes, minus 16 dB, so that our heads don't explode. So this is the before. And of course, the after. Once again. So this is the sound that I'm going for. Let's take a quick tour. First thing is, yes, I have filters on. So everything below 200 hertz is being shaved off. Why? I'm going to rein this back to 0. So with it, it's consistently thinner. But with it out, the low end is just going in and out. I would rather have it be more uniform and then compensate with another instance of EQ. You see here that Neutron 4 is at the ready. So this is going to get me to a better place. Then I have a little bit of compression going on to rein things in, and then my EQ is trying to get a little bit of that snarl. Again, all of that SSL grit is coming from this. I am distorting the heck out of it too so that I can get some of that saturation, and then I'm going to polish things off with Neutron. Neutron here has an EQ. Same thing as before, guys. House cleaning with this high pass at 70 hertz because the kick drum has all of that low end. I'm adding a resonant peak at 80. And I'm adding a little bit of ducking at about 1K, but these are dynamic now. So here, I'm going to bypass the compressors so you can listen to what the EQ is doing. So here what I'm trying to do with dynamic filters is the low end is coming in and out a little bit. So I want it to give me a uniform sound by reacting to the different frequency energy output coming out of the sound. So this mid-range one is all of that extra mid-range that sometimes gets a little harsh, it ducks it down. Then I have a compressor that tries to rein in the low end a little bit more. Here it is without and with. Again, it's just keeping that low end uniform and under control. And then finally, we have our sidechain compression as we did before, reacting to the kicks and snares. That is quite a wonder, as in W-A, wonderful way of getting to a bass tone, but this is mixing, guys. Deep breath, clear your minds, and let's go listen to this thing, because at the end of the day, it's just got to rock. So does it. It kind of does. Let's listen to that again. I love it. This is honoring that heavy rock part. It has all of the snarl. The kick drums are still very nice and present. There's no masking of any sort going on. We are totally ready to continue to the little ornaments that the other bass tracks are going to give us in the next chapter ahead. So we have one track here that is a sub bass, and it sounds like this. This wants to be a sub bass, and as you might remember, we did a little bit of editing and took it out of the verse. It wasn't really audible. It just kind of let the low end cat out of the bag a little too soon. So I put it in the pre-chorus and in the choruses. But more importantly, here in the interlude is where it really makes an appearance, because there are no other basses to cloud its entry. The thing about it, though, is it has a ton of low end. But you know what I'm thinking about? Your phones. Your laptops. This needs to translate. So it not only needs a lot of low end, but it needs a little bit of mid-range presence for us to hear the note. And this at a quiet level, it's just not going to cut through. So this is informing what I am doing in processing. Here I've put an instance of Neutron, and the first thing that I'm doing is exciting it. I am distorting it a little bit. The distortion is meant to excite those upper harmonics and in essence just make it brighter. So we went from this to now this. Plus it also reminds me of Miami Bass Wars with those awesome cars with hydraulics. This is kind of what they sounded like in my mind. So then I am doing a little bit of house cleaning here, as we've done before. The low end, below 45, we don't really need much of that. And then this is just a little bit of cleanup. So before, after, and then we're putting our sidechain compressor when it happens with the drums, so we can just tuck it in a little. We're going to listen to the before, and yes, of course, it's going to have more low end. Nobody will have access to how it used to be before it is released. So what I want you just to feel is, does the part speak through laptops, phones, etc., etc.? Do we get that down, down thing coming through or not? This is the before. And this is the after. It's a little gesture of low-end support that I think is carried out very well this way. If this was maybe a hip-hop mix that we needed a huge, gigantic 808, maybe my approach would be a little bit different. But in the scheme of all the basses we have going on, to me, this gives it this little nice support for the interlude. Now that we're done with the main foundational parts of the bass, I've left this little guy at the end for opportunities for creativity. So we have this part here. Check it out. And what should we do with it? Because in essence, it's kind of doing what this bass is already doing. Right? If I just try to put it in as it is, I'm going to have to mangle it so much, or maybe bring the other one down to not mask each other. So, because I've been given free rein to be creative, we could create something in this third chorus, right? It's the end of the song. I want this to become this wide modulating pad. If we have this, I want this to be something that just kind of tickles my ears with that sound so that this other bass here can lead in the center. First thing that I started with is I copied literally the SSL module that I had on the previous bass because it seems like it was maybe the same thing. I'm going to play just a second. It's going to get really loud. There. This is literally, I'm cheating here. Copy pasting, boom. And this is just giving me the snarl and the top end, the top end as well, and the saturation that I'm looking for. And then I'm getting weirder. Here I'm putting vocal synth on this. What I'm trying to get at a vocal synth is making it throatier sounding. And why do I go for vocal synth? Because I love that it has a vocoder. It has all of these little modules that, for lack of a better word, are like a little talk box or something like that. I love that. So here is the bass before. What is my approach to something like vocal synth? And here I'm just going to give you a concept that I want you to use. This thing has too many buttons. I go to presets. And in presets, you see here that I have auto mode, and some of them are classic, clear, deep, edgy, lush, monstrous, a whole mess of stuff. What's my vision? I want this to be a little bit throatier. So maybe I go for edgy. And I start literally going through the presets until I find one that closely approximates what I'm looking for. And then I sculpt and tweak from there. It's the same thing, if you think about it, as what we did for finding the kick drum sample, right? This is the sound that I want. I go through all of them until, oh, that one. Then I put it in and EQ and process accordingly. Then Nectar. Yes, this is typically associated with vocals, I guess. The plugin police is not going to come after you if you put this on a bass. Why am I putting it on a bass? It has a great harmony module, and I love the dimension, which has either chorusing or flanging or phasing. It's so bold, for lack of a better word. So if I reveal each one so you can hear what it's doing to the sound. Whoa! So it got super wide and it felt like it got higher note range, higher frequency spectrum, the whole thing. Here, what I'm doing basically is putting a harmonizer, but I'm choosing the voices only. So it's all the way wet. I'm also making it unison, so I'm keeping the same note, but I am making them really wide and I'm cutting out a lot of low end. So before. And because it's trying to harmonize, it's getting a little wobbly and awesome. Dimension. Are you envisioning me having fun doing this stuff? And here I'm in complete exploring mode. Then for EQ, I am doing quite a bit of house cleaning. And here what I'm finding is by cleaning out all of that top end, before the amount of presence that was coming towards me the most was the mechanical sound of the pick. And by shaving all of that off, now I can hear more of the tone of the bass. So check that out. So I just hear more of that fundamental. And then delay, because if we're getting dreamy and weird, why not? Whoa, dude, it's so spacey and awesome. And yes, I'm digging this. Then flanger, because I just want to exaggerate a little more. And finally, we have here our good old sidechain compressor reacting to those kicks and snares. So here I'm going to put it in context because obviously the sidechain compressor won't fire without it. And I want you to meditate on the sound, because this is, again, like I said before, something to just tickle your ears. So when I pop it in, it's not going to jump at you. But what I'm looking for is width, and I want something to modulate a little bit more. So here we go. It's subtle, but it's totally there. This is a headphone thing. I'm going to do it one more time so that you can really hear it, but I want this to be, again, that kind of ear tickling thing on the sides. Here we go. There you have it. Here is an opportunity to grab something that was kind of problematic for a mix, right? Sometimes you get a bunch of tracks and you don't know where to fit them. Those could become great chances for some creativity. In this case, some bass creativity. Now that all parts are in, the foundational, the accessory, the weird, and the beautiful. Let's go and put some finishing touches on this by ways of automation. We have a lot of compression on the bass, right? And one would think that if you have something that is compressing, you will have dynamic uniformity. Yes. The thing, though, is think about dynamics in this way. This is quiet and this is loud, right? We might have a bass that used to be going like this dynamically, and now we put a compressor and now it's kind of doing this. It's more dynamically uniform. The thing is that maybe in the verse, it's playing by itself. But in the pre-chorus, a guitar comes in and the guitar is now this loud. So now in the pre-chorus, this, which maybe before without a compressor was able to do that, now it's just held back. So I find that it's inevitable to have to move your fader up and down a little bit so that you can really fine tune when things are maybe masked by an accent or an event. So here, as you can see, I have on my volume lines on every track, I've made some automation moves. And I'm going to hit play. Don't even look at it, just take it in and listen specifically for the dynamic presence of the two main basses, right? And then the da-da-da-da-da to those two. And just see if they sound like they are intelligible and forward. They sounded really forward to me. And that was because I was moving the fader every time I felt they were masked a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is instead play this back for you, but I will turn off these little automation moves that I've done. And I'm going to do so on these two main basses. Here, you see that when I turn these off, this is on and it will read the fader moving up or down. If I turn this off, now it will just play, illustrated by the blue line, where the fader used to be, statically where it used to be. And I want you to now close your eyes and hear the uniformity and dynamic presence of these basses. I was having to squint a little bit to hear some of those notes. And the reason was, there's a handful of reasons why. One of them is because there are drum accents that are getting in the way. I'm going to play it one more time for you without the automation. But now look at the automation lines and see that those places where you see the lines go up is exactly those parts where we're losing that intelligibility. Now I'm going to turn these on, and mission here is to forget about the lines, listen to how it just comes forth. I'm loving it, and it sounds uniform, even though we have to do all of this kind of trickery, if you will. We've used automation now as a way to create dynamic uniformity, but how about automation to infuse a little bit of melodrama into our tracks? I got a little bit creative here with the automation. This is a headphone part. So for all of you, put your headphones on if you have them. If not, crank the level. I want you to hear that little stuff that's on the outsides. Here, my main aim is for it to be present. Here, I'm ducking it down because I don't want to mask the heavier bass. And then I'm doing a quite dramatic ramp up so that I create a little bit of a swell before the cycle resets. So check it out. If you're wearing headphones, you can hear that kind of blossoming of that flanger. I'm just going to do it in solo just so that you can see how dramatic of a dynamic move I'm carving out for this. So there you have it. This automation job that we've done, as you can see, is all over the track, making sure dynamic uniformity is great top to bottom, and also taking maybe more radical approaches to ducking where masking was happening, but maybe turning things up aggressively to create maybe a swell going into another section. So there you go. Do not miss out on this step, as this is part of the art of mixing. How about if we listen to this piece of music as music? Let's just close our eyes and take the trip.